Hello everyone, welcome to our the seventh session. So today we are going to talk about Japan's rise as imperial powers. Before talking about Japan's rise, let's look at this picture. This painting's name, you probably saw that so many times. So the painting's name is The Great Wave of Kanagawa. It was painted by Katsushika Hukase. So this one probably is the best known works of Japanese art represents ukiyo-e. Ukiyo-e is a genre of Japanese art. It flourished from the 17th through 19th centuries. Its artists produced woodblock prints and paintings of such subjects as female beauties, kabuki actors, and sumo wrestlers. They also produced scenes from history and folk tales, travel scenes and landscapes, flora and fauna, and erotica. Ukiyo-e was central to forming the West people's perception of Japanese art in the late 19th century, especially the landscapes of Hakusei and Hiroshige. From the 1870s, Japanism became a prominent trend and had a strong influence on the early Impressionists such as Degas, Manet, and Monet, as well as post-impressionists such as Van Gogh and Art Nouveau artists. The artist Hakusei produced this woodblock print between 1829 and 1833 in the late Edo period. Let's go back to the image. Okay, the image depicts enormous wave threatening three boats off the coast of the town of Kanagawa, while Mountain Fuji here rises in the background. Okay, now let's look at the centralized feudalism of Tokugawa's ruling in Japan. The Tokugawa shogun ruled Japan from Edo, which is modern Tokyo, until 1869 and imposed strong central control over all Japan for the first time. So it was ruled by shogun. As I said before, the capital city of Edo was modern Tokyo. They had a very rigid social structure, which you will see in next slide. And also, I want to introduce their belief systems. So the first one is Shinto, or Shintoism. So Shinto, this is a Japanese ethnic religion that focuses on ritual practices to be carried out diligently and establishing a connection between present-day Japan and its ancient past. Shinto means the way of kami. Generally, it means sacred or divine power, specifically the various gods of deities. It came into use in order to distinguish indigenous Japanese beliefs from Buddhism. It is a kind of polytheism. It has no founder, no official sacred scriptures in the strict sense, and no fixed dogmas. It is more readily observed in the social life of the Japanese people and in their personal motivations than in a pattern of formal belief or philosophy. And then is the Zen Buddhism. So Buddhism was introduced into Japan from China. And the third is Christianity. You are supposed to read the part of Japan's century of Christianity. So during the years of the Civil War in Japan, Portuguese ships had frequented Japanese ports, bringing European weapons and Catholic missionaries to the island. Many Japanese were converted to Christianity, including some daimyos, and European gangs played a key role in the warfare. But by 1638, all foreigners were expelled, including the troublesome missionaries, and Christian converts were killed or forced to recant. One or two Dutch ships a year were allowed to trade at Nagasaki so that the Japanese remained aware of developments outside of Asia. Okay, now let's look at Japanese social structure. First, the emperor, and then shogun, daimyo, samurai, then farmers, the artisans, the merchants, which was similar to the Chinese social hierarchy. Emperor and intellectuals were at the top of the social structure, but merchants were at the bottom of the social structure. So now let's turn to Japan's Sakoku policy. So during this period, the Japanese Tokugawa shogunate had the isolationist foreign policy named Sakoku. Trade and relations between Japan and other Western countries were severely limited. Nearly all foreign nationals were barred from entering Japan, and common Japanese people were kept from leaving the country for over 220 years. The Sakoku policy was also a way of controlling commerce between Japan and other nations. It also asserted its new place in the East Asian hierarchy. The Tokugawa had set out to create their new small-scale international system, in this system, Japan could continue to access the trade in essential products such as medicines. But Japan could also gain access to essential intelligence about happenings in China and other Asian countries. Meanwhile, Japan was able to avoid a subordinate status within the Chinese tributary system. Under strict Tokugawa control, Japan enjoyed over 2 centuries of order, prosperity, and economic growth. But the Tokugawa's control rested on a rigid system of feudal ties. But meanwhile, the economy grew, the population grew, and a new merchant class became more prominent, and also pressures from the Western world occurred. On July the 8th, 1853, an American Commodore Matthew Perry, he led his 4 ships into the harbor at Tokyo Bay. The Americans sought to re-establish for the first time in over 200 years regular trade and discourse between Japan and the Western world. There were several reasons why the United States became interested in revitalizing contact between Japan and the West in the middle 19th century. First, it was the combination of the opening Chinese ports to regular trade and the annexation of California. So the Americans, they wanted to create an American port on the Pacific. So this port could ensure that there would be a steady stream of maritime traffic between North America and Asia. Then the American traders in the Pacific replaced sailing ships with steamships, which means they needed to secure coaling stations. Uh, so they could stop to take on provisions and fuel while making the long trip from the United States to China. The combination of Japan's advantageous geographic position and rumors increased the appeal of establishing commercial and diplomatic contacts with the Japanese. So the rumor was that Japan held a vast deposit of coal. Actually, Japan did not have much coal. Additionally, the American whaling industry had pushed into the North Pacific by the middle 18th century. People in the whaling industry, they also sought safe harbors, assistance in case of shipwrecks, and reliable supply stations. In the years before to the Perry mission, a number of American sailors found themselves shipwrecked on Japanese shores. There were many tales of the American sailors' mistreatment at the hands of the unwelcoming Japanese. So these stories spread through the merchant community and across the United States. And also, you probably know the belief of the manifest destiny that motivated U.S. expansion across the North America. So this belief also encouraged Americans to find new lands in the Pacific. At the time, many Americans believed that they had a special responsibility to modernize and civilize the Chinese and Japanese. In the case of Japan, missionaries felt that Protestant Christianity would be accepted because Catholicism had generally been rejected. Other Americans argued that even if the Japanese were unreceptive to Western ideals, the Americans could force them to interact and trade with the world, and this would be a necessity that would ultimately benefit both nations. Anyway, the Perry expedition led directly to the establishment of diplomatic relations between Japan and the Western great powers, and eventually caused the collapse of the ruling Tokugawa shogunate and the Meiji Restoration. Foreign demands for trade concession, as in China, finally broke down Japan's self-imposed isolation in 1853 by the Meiji Restoration. Although it did ostensibly restore the emperor, the Meiji Restoration was more accurately seen as a non-violent revolution, and this revolution brought to power a new group of radical reformers who set Japan on a course of rapid modernization and westernization and imperialization. So here is another painting of Perry's mission, of Perry's ships. We can see that in the Japanese painter's eyes, the ships looked like a monster. So after the Perry's mission, we see the fall of Tokugawa shogunate, and there were also several reasons for the fall. First, the Western civilization had arrived, brought by the Americans and other Westerners, and was threatening to gain power there. Second was the samurai group. They were similar to knights in Europe. They had a strong sense of honor, so the samurai, they were upset at surrendering to Westerners. And also, the Tokugawa shogunate, they had to end 250 years of isolation, so this behavior was seen as a signal of weakness. Last, some daimyo, they saw this as an opportunity to change the social structure. So here is the last shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu. So now, because of the Westerners' invasion, the shogun lost their authority and their recognition by the people. The presence of the West triggered nationalist unrest in Japan. So, who will most of the people in Japan turn to for leadership, and why? So, people of all classes, they appealed to the emperor for support. Because if we think about the traditional social structure of Japan, emperor always enjoyed the most authority and honor of the whole Japanese society. So they used the slogan, "Revere the emperor, expel the barbarians." Now let's compare these two figures. The first one was the last shogun, and this one was the Meiji emperor. So we can say they were very different. The last shogun, he was depicted, he was more traditional, but the new emperor, we can say he's more masculine, and he wear this kind of military costume and and represented a new Western ideal. I'm not going to talk about the details of the Meiji Restoration because I post a PDF document. You can see all the details of Meiji Restoration. So the major changes include abolished feudalism in Japan society, and also the new government eliminated samurai armies. They also reformed education. They created a centralized government and encouraged loyalty to the emperor. And also, they published Japan's first Western-style constitution, the Meiji Restoration. They also adopted Western technology and opened up trade, ended isolation, built diplomatic contacts with other Western powers. But there were several problems caused by the rapid modernization. First one, the poor living standards existed in crowded cities like other capitalist countries. And also, political differences led to instability and frequent assassination of leaders, as we see in the history. And also, there were constant questioning and debate about Westernization in Japan for a long time. And they also, a new disgruntled samurai class emerged. And also because of the modernization and industrialization, there was a great need for raw materials. But Japan it's a small island, so where could Japan get the raw materials? Which means invasion to other East Asian countries like China and Korea. So the officials, they found some ways to solve the problems. They urged people's loyalty to the emperor. So people's loyalty to the emperor became a center of national identity. And then Japan started several wars to get access to raw materials and bigger market. You can also find the details of these wars in that reading document. Thank you very much for listening to today's lecture.